This is Pineleaf Needles, Skirmisher Middle-earth. It's time to run our first skirmish. To run a skirmish, you need to open the instance finder. You can either have a button assigned to this, or you could hit Ctrl J. The instance finder has 3 tabs: Simple, Advanced, and Specific. The Simple tab is the one we'll use today. It's the easiest to use, but also the least flexible. In this, you can specify a role. For Warden, that can either be defense, or damage, or both. And you can select the type of instance: skirmishes, Erebor instances, or classic instances. These are the classic scaling instances. You cannot run a non-scalable instance through the simple tab. I'll turn off the classic instances since I want to run a skirmish. So with everything I want selected, I just hit join, and I'm placed into the queue. I now have 5 minutes until I launch. In this time, it will attempt to match me with other players. Now, I could wind up in a skirmish from either a solo skirmish, a duo, a small fellowship, or a full fellowship. It will not place me into a raid. As you can see, this is going to take some time. Now, usually I use a different panel where I am able to get in faster. Now, on the specific panel, which I'll show you while I'm waiting, you have a lot more choice. I still have the Erebor I could choose. I can also choose the classic instances, where I have the choice with the Great Barrows and other, in this case, Inn of the Forsaken. And of course, my skirmishes, where I have a choice between 3 skirmishes: Siege of Gondomar, Storm of Methydras, and Trouble in Tuckborough. When I use the simple interface, I have no choice on which skirmish I want to run. It's going to randomly choose one of the 3 skirmishes that I currently have available. The higher my level, the more skirmishes I'll have available. For using the Simple tab, I do get a bonus. First off, I get a 50% bonus to all currency I receive during the course of the skirmish. It is possible to get a reward that high in the advanced one, but I'll show you that in a later episode. In addition to this, I also get a 5% bonus to morale and power. The purpose of these is to encourage players to use the instance finder. Though in practice, very few players use the simple tab. I am only doing this today to show you how it works. Most likely, I'll never use it again. Now, since you don't want to see me sit through the next 2.5 minutes of this, we will just skip over until it's ready. As you can see, I have not yet been matched, so therefore I will most likely time out. If I time out when selecting a skirmish, I will be thrown into a solo skirmish. And that's what it looks like is happening. So now I have 2 minutes to confirm that I'm ready to enter. And once I do,
Brigands and goblins lay siege to the great smeals of Tuckborough. Provisions are running low, and time is running short.
and I'm being placed into Trouble in Tuckborough. I called my soldier, and I'm ready to begin. I have a bounder here who's telling me that there is a terrible plight here. Sharky's men have locked the Tooks inside the great Schmales, It is just before harvest, so the foodstuffs are running low. Please, drive off the brigands and goblins. I will see if there are any in the Shire who can aid us, but it will take time. Do not wait for me. The Tooks depend upon you. And I'm ready to begin. And here we have the first set of enemies at the first control point. I will pull this Rager here. It looks like I also managed to bring in this Kegmaster. Now the Kegmaster is a lieutenant. Lieutenants all have special abilities, like this one is able to heal himself, as well as make you drunk. Now as you can see, these guys are going down pretty fast. That's the nature of low-level skirmishes. The opponents tend to be paper thin, partly because players don't have all their abilities yet, and partly because many players who are doing low-level skirmishes are not yet familiar with the system. Now I am familiar with the system, therefore I'm all nice and prepared. It also helps that this particular version of Pineleaf has been doing every quest available, so I'm fairly well developed. Therefore, I think I'm a little bit stronger than the average level 20. Now, the biggest problem that I did have was whenever I was running a skirmish at level 20, I tend to ended the skirmish at level 21. To avoid this, I decided to get a Stone of the Turtle, which halts my experience. Thus, I am now able to show you all of the skirmishes at level 20. Or I should mean that all the ones that are available at that level. Now, here comes the next one. And when I completed a deed. Oh, I accidentally hit the Zealot of Pain instead of the regular guy. You saw the Zealot there yell. What that yell means is that he buffs his friends to do extra damage. At this level, they're not lasting long enough in order for that to make any significant difference. So at higher levels, you would want to avoid hitting the Zealot of Pain until you've killed everybody around him. And let me clear out my alerts. And take the second control point. One of the problems about having no control at this, when using the simple tab, is I could not run it at tier 2 or tier 3, which probably would be more appropriate at this time. I think that's a Shepherd of Filth there. Yep. What the Shepherd of Filth does is bring up these filth crawlers that you see there, and I need to get rid of it. And I did it. What those filth crawlers do is place some filth on me, some goo, which slows me down. So therefore, I'm at plus 30% attack duration, minus 10% run speed, and plus 10% all skill inductions. It's not a fun thing to have on you. And you can have up to 5 tiers of that on you, so you really don't want to Shepherd of Filth putting those crawlers. Now, here's the Deathmonger. Now, Deathmonger likes to raise spirits from fallen companions, which means I'm going to kill him first. That's the way things work. You have some lieutenants like the Zealot of Pain you want to kill last, and some like the Deathmonger that you want to kill first. Now, there are deeds associated with each of the lieutenants. You complete the first level of the deed by killing 5 of them. And then there's another tier where you have to kill 50 more. Yes, that's a lot of lieutenants. But if you do many skirmishes, you'll get through them pretty quickly. I'm getting through this in record time because we're at level 20, where you go through very quickly due to the paper-thin opponents. And here's a encounter notification. We'll see it come up in the billboard in a minute. A laugh erupts. The great Schmeals will burn. So there's a goblin there that wants to set them on fire. Now encounters, those are elite mobs. So they're the toughest opponents you'll face in a skirmish. At least in a solo one. Sometimes they're even tougher than the boss to the fight. So therefore, I will. Now I need to get out of this fire area. I definitely need to run this at tier 2 to have any sort of challenge. Now, as you go up in level, the skirmishes will become tougher and more of a challenge. The opponents become tougher relative to your level. So they're not going to go through these as fast as I'm doing now. But this will show you the flow of the skirmish. So therefore, running it at level 20 is useful for that account. A roar echoes from near the great willow. That will be a bear. I'll show you that in a moment. And here's a Defender of the Vial. What the Defender of the Vial does is he gives a buff to his friends that makes them take less damage. Therefore, you want to kill the Defender first, so that you're not wasting most of your damage. Alright. You notice there we have this bounder there who is helping me in the fight. They don't help me when I go and capture the location, but they pop out of the doors when you take the control point. Now, let's find this bear. It'll be near the Great Willow, which is right here. Ah, here he is. Big Fright. I will go into stealth for a moment. Not that stealth is particularly useful in skirmish, but it allows me to make an instant cast of my javelin. And the bear falls. Now, of course, I do have one question of curiosity. Am I allowed to fish in a skirmish? I've never thought of that before. Therefore, let us bring out my fishing pole and cast away. Well, it seems to be working. How do I catch anything useful? Other than a javelin, it looks like. Yes, I do catch a fish. So therefore, yes, you are allowed to fish in this skirmish. Now, while I have this open, you'll see that I have these 2 flag items. These are dropped by the encounters. The first encounter dropped a minor emblem of enlightenment, which grants me a bonus to tactical offense. Essentially, it means my streams will become better. It's more useful to a tactical user, such as a lore master or a rune keeper. And a minor token of the fist, which gives a penalty to melee offense to your opponent, which would be more useful for me. Well, maybe not when you're running it at level 20 and the opponents are dead before you know it in any case. Now let me go up to the next section. Here we go. And there's a wolf. Now in this skirmish you face 3 types of opponents. Wolves, goblins, and brigands. And this doesn't count the lieutenants. The lieutenants are considered to be supernumeraries when it comes to skirmish. Now you see that my soldier is not attacking the zealot. This is because of the screen the zealot gives. Now you notice that right at the very end, my archer did take a shot. This is because when the zealot gets below 1/4 morale, it's no longer able to scream. When it's no longer able to scream, then my archer will now start fighting it. I can override this by using my direct soldier command. Now there are other lieutenants where that's also true with. For example, a lieutenant with a shield, which we won't see in this skirmish. At least not at solo mode. There are some shielded lieutenants in group play. But there is one that does appear in solo mode called the okay. Oh, Arch. Let's see. Daywalker Berserker. And the Daywalker Berserker has a temporary one, but he doesn't appear in the skirmish because he's a big Gorgoroth troll, and trolls don't appear in the Shire. And we have another one of these. Oh, this one's a Stormkeeper. So he's effectively a Runekeeper. So he has lightning that he sends out at you. And now we're at the courtyard. The courtyard is the toughest area in this skirmish. And my idea here is to try to pull the first lieutenant without pulling the other lieutenant, because there are 2 lieutenants in this room. So I usually try to grab somebody there. And I try not to get too far in. This is one of my reasons I prefer an archer in this skirmish. Since archers don't tend to run in and try to grab everybody like Leroy Jenkins. While some of the melee ones do tend to do that. And it looks like as you can see, I think I got no. Looks like didn't aggro anyone else. So now I'll go after the Defender of the Vial. The Defender of the Vial and that bonus, that's what that green stuff around it means. It's buffing his friends. And it's a rather wide aura. So the way things are going right now, nothing's lasting very long. So I probably could fight right through that aura. But at later levels, though, you will want to kill him first. And that is the courtyard cleared. Now I'll show you this again at level 85, so that you can see how much longer the opponents last there. But so far, we've only taken 15 minutes, which is a pretty fast run. Now comes the boss. Now in most skirmishes, the boss is an elite. So in this skirmish, he's only a signature. This is because he sends a wave out first, and with some classes it's possible to wind up being right next to the boss at the end of the wave and having to fight him immediately. So they decided to make him a signature. Now when you're in groups though, they don't give you that break. You have the same strength of boss as you have in any others. And also in groups, he tends to call in lieutenants to help him. So it's a much tougher fight in a group. And they collect on the chest where I get a veteran's bounty. Your primary reward are these bounties, where each bounty here is worth 23 silver. And the veteran's one is worth... Okay, that's the 4 I have total are worth 23. And the veteran's one is worth 21 by itself, so almost as much as 4 of the others. In later levels, you start to collect additional rewards, relics for legendary items, and occasionally some better stuff also. But when you're in the lower levels, where all the opponents are fairly weak, you tend to get only bounties. Though, if you're paying attention, you will see that a couple of lieutenants did drop tokens. Though probably only one, yes, one iron token during this run of the skirmish. And that concludes our first skirmish. I got a couple of marks, but not many to write home about. Now, if you were astute, you would notice, though, that I do have 800 marks. How did I get 800 marks if that was my first skirmish? The answer to that is that we're at festival time, and while doing all these quests, I was getting a ton of iron and 10 tokens. And I just turned in those tokens, and I gained a bounty of marks. So therefore, I have plenty of marks to work with. And that's it for today. May your shield protect you, and your spear never break.